you said something that just thrilled me to my toes.
Well, you know, Canada stands for peace in the world. And Canada has not taken sides in many of the world disputes, such as Vietnam and so forth in the past. And you have a spiritual heritage here, both in Quebec and in Ontario and in Western Canada. And you have the spiritual groundwork is already here. And there's an afterglow that I think you feel. Now, people are not attending church today in Canada as they once were. Toronto was once called, when I first came here, Toronto the Good, because so many people went to church. So many people believed in God. So many people believed in Christ. But I believe that Canada stands in a very unique position. If Canada should have a spiritual awakening and a spiritual revival, I think it could lead the world. I think the whole world would look to Canada. And I think Canada could become the world leader in the spiritual dimension.
Fear is a dangerous thing. Once stoked, whether by a judge from the bench or a prime minister with a dog whistle, there is no way to predict where it will end. These are troubling times. Across Canada, and especially in my home province, Canadians are being encouraged by their government to be fearful of one another. For me, it is both unconscionable and a real threat to Canadian liberty. Once stoked, whether by a judge from the bench or a prime minister with a dog whistle.
Something broke last night, and it was obviously something very important. We found out last night that the NDP and the Liberals were meeting secretly, and they've cooked up a backroom deal that would see Justin Trudeau the majority power that he tried desperately to get last fall in the last election, but he failed to get. This deal means that Canadians have woken up to, in essence, an NDP Liberal majority government. I think we have to let that sink in. This is an NDP Liberal government, and they have the majority. Something broke last night, and it was obviously something very important. We found out last night that the NDP and the Liberals were meeting secretly, and they've cooked up a backroom deal. Last night, that the NDP and the Liberals were meeting secretly, and they've cooked up a backroom deal that would see Justin Trudeau get the majority power that he tried desperately to get last fall in the last election, but he failed to get.
Okay, so here is a correspondent, senior correspondent from the CBC, and I'm just going to read this out a little bit here. This is a conversation that I heard on one of the channels that I watch, and so I'm just going to really push this through, and I'm just going to read this out, okay? And it's really a cause for discernment here as we go along, and everything will explain itself, all right? So Terry Milowiski worked in 50 countries during the 38 years with the CBC. He was the CBC's first Middle East bureau chief, spent 8 years in Washington during the Reagan and the Bush-Clinton administration, and was based in Vancouver for 14 years before returning to Ottawa as a senior correspondent. Okay. So CBC News. And the topic is Justin Trudeau. Honeymoon period, how long can it last? Okay, CBC News. Liberal leader takes power with the wind at his back, but that wind can shift quickly. Again, this is Terry, CBC News, posted November 30th, 2015, 5 a.m. Eastern. Last updated November 3rd, 2015. Yes, we have the 3 5s. So Trudeau smiles as he leaves his first news conference since winning the election on October 20th. The Liberal leader says he intends to formally open the new Liberal era with an emphasis on teamwork and openness. Openness. We know he covets, right? Okay. On the second day, infrastructure dollars will wash over the land, and the wicked witch will melt. We're off to see the wizard. Okay, the wizard turned out to be the huckster, and it is true. And in truth, U.S. President Barack Obama has predicted Trudeau's pledge of real change. Probably means that his legendary hair will change to gray, and quickly. Just say the magic word, Senate, and see if it doesn't happen. Here, this really got my attention, talking about the moons and phases and weddings. Sadly, there is no set plan for the political honeymoon. A romantic one is easy. Tradition has it that you sip the material honey unto the moons in the same phase as it was at the wedding. So a month. Politicians try to make it last longer. The concept was originally an American notion beginning in the Depression with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 100 days. I just want to finish it off with this here. Trudeau has long since cast his own party senators into outer darkness. They're no longer in his caucus. They're not liberal senators. They're senators who just happen to be liberals, and they can vote as they please. But even if they vote liberal, there won't be enough of them. So how exactly will Trudeau get his legislation through Parliament with a conservative majority in the Senate? Can he just hope that the unelected Senate will be too embarrassed to block bills passed by the elected House?
Notwithstanding clause says, regardless of the fact that we are attacking your fundamental rights or limiting your fundamental rights, and the Charter says that was wrong, we're still going to go ahead and do it. It's basically a loophole that allows a majority to override fundamental rights of a minority. And that's why I agree with my father that it is not a great thing to have in a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What the notwithstanding clause says, regardless of the fact that we are attacking your fundamental rights or limiting your fundamental rights, and the Charter says that was wrong, we're still going to go ahead and do it. It's basically a loophole that allows a majority to override fundamental rights of a minority.
Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Early this morning, I woke from my sleep. I heard his voice, spoke some
College, questions and comments? The honourable member for Oshawa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I listened to my colleague's speech. I had a constituent that wanted me to ask a question about outside interference to our democracy. Klaus Schwab is the head of the World Economic Forum, and he bragged how his subversive WEF, World Economic Forum, has quoted infiltrated governments around the world. He said that his organization had penetrated more than half of Canada's cabinet. And I was wondering, in the interest of transparency, could the member please name which cabinet ministers are on board with the WEF's agenda? My concern is the deputy.
Order. I know that the member was in a really good question there, but the audio is really bad and the video is really bad as well. And I apologize. I don't know if the member. Okay. Let's try again. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, that member was promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. Is de heer Klaus Schwab, oprichter en voorzitter van het World Economic Forum. En hij heeft ook een boek geschreven met als pakkende titel COVID-19, The Great Reset. En mijn vraag aan de demissionair minister-president is: hoe beoordeelt hij de inhoud van dit boek?
De minister-president.
Ja, ik ken het boek niet, voorzitter. Maar ik zou even mij willen adviseren om niet al te veel in al die conspiracy-theorieën. Ik kijk ze ook allemaal op YouTube. Ik vind dat fascinerend hoe dan uitgelegd wordt dat 9/11 niet heeft plaatsgevonden of dat het allemaal anders zit. Dat zet het mat in elkaar gezet. Maar het is meestal wat het is, een conspiracy-theorie.
Wel, sinds ik beëdigd ben als Kamerlid direct wordt beantwoord. Dank u wel, maar het verbaast mij dat die eerste vraag direct wordt beantwoord met een leugen. Ik heb namelijk een brief in mijn hand die dateert van 26 november 2020. En dat is een brief van de heer Rutte aan de heer Klaus Schwab, waarin hij de heer Schwab bedankt voor het toezenden van zijn boek. En dit noemt een hoopvolle analyse voor een betere toekomst. Zou de heer Rutte nog even kunnen graven in zijn geheugen? Het is nog geen half jaar geleden, dus ik weet niet hoe lang uw herinneringen actief blijven. Maar waarschijnlijk is dit nog wel ergens op te graven. En mijn eerste vraag opnieuw te beantwoorden en nu eerlijk, alstublieft.
Nou, het eerlijke antwoord is dat dat een nette brief is. Waarin je helaas niet alle boeken die je toegestuurd krijgt van kaft tot kaft kunt lezen, maar wel degene die je toestuurt vriendelijke brief wil terugsturen.
Nou, dan zegt de heer Rutte dus eigenlijk dat hij niet heeft gelogen tegen mij, maar tegen de heer Klaus Schwab. Maar laat ik dan hier direct alsnog de vraag stellen. De heer Klaus Schwab, die pleit in zijn boek voor het resetten van onze wereld, om onze nationale parlementaire democratie te vervangen door een globale technocratie. Hij pleit ervoor dat er een einde komt aan privébezit. En de heer Rutte is er kennelijk niet eens van bewust dat hij dit een hoopvolle boodschap voor een betere toekomst heeft genoemd. Hoe is het mogelijk dat de heer Rutte een waardeoordeel hecht aan een boek met een neocommunistische boodschap, terwijl hij dat boek niet eens gelezen heeft?
Dank u wel, de minister-president.
It's a very pertinent question to ask, how do we build back better?
To build back better or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it build back better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
It's my plan to build back better.
Start taking all the problems that have been...
All elements of the Great Reset are fundamental to building the future we need.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset.
When I mention our names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the world economic forum.
And that's true in Argentina too. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina, and it's true in France now. I mean, with the president, with a young global leader. But what is...
Remember when Obama wrote on the steel beam, "We remember, we rebuild, we come back stronger"? I just want to remind everybody here, Malachi 1:4, whereas Adam saith, "We are impoverished but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call themselves the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord has indignation forever."
How many people were allowed into Canada from Hubei province after this government received intelligence showing the danger of the coronavirus from our military?
Honorable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we became aware that the coronavirus was indeed a threat and that there were a number of places around the world where we were receiving people who could have the contagion of the coronavirus. That is why at the border we were very clear about giving clear instructions about the need for self-isolation.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
After the government received intelligence from our military about the dangers of the coronavirus in China, it allowed 2,000 people from the Hubei province, the most affected province, to come into Canada. Were these 2,000 people quarantined? Yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I hope the member opposite knows, quarantine is a very specific legal term, and the measures of quarantine are currently in place. Prior to that obligatory quarantine being in place, incoming travelers, whether they were Canadian or not, were very clearly told to self-isolate.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Told to self-isolate but not required to self-isolate, and therefore this government allowed thousands of people into this country who came from the affected regions, even though there were briefings the government had explaining the danger of doing just that.
Media asked his health minister and his chief medical officer for evidence supporting the decision. Neither had any, and in fact, the medical officer said it was time to return to normalcy. So yet, the Prime Minister, in spite of all of these facts, brought in this new mandate to deprive people of their living. Why? Because he knew that it would spark in them a sense of desperation. If he could deprive them of their incomes, they would be so desperate that they would have to rise up and protest. And then he could further demonize them and call them names and attack their motives and belittle them and dehumanize them in order to galvanize the majority against the minority. This must be the political opportunity that his deputy Prime Minister spoke about when she described what COVID represented to this government. They have attempted to amplify and take advantage of every pain, every fear, every tragedy that has struck throughout this pandemic in order to divide one person against another and replace the people's freedom with the government's power. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, it started immediately. The government attempted to ram through a law giving it the power to raise any tax to any level for any reason without a vote in Parliament. They tried to pass Bill C-10 to strip away free speech online. Thankfully, Conservatives blocked them for doing so. His authorities have said they want to track Canadian cell phones for the next 5 years. And now this, the Emergency Act, the latest and greatest example of attacks on our freedom. Ostensibly meant to stop blockades that had already ended before he even brought forward this legislation in Alberta, Manitoba, and at the Ambassador Bridge. Peacefully, those blockades were ended in some cases with protesters hugging the police officers and bringing the matters to a successful close so that goods and services could resume. And instead, in that context, the Prime Minister brought in a law that not even Jean Chrétien brought in after 9/11 killed dozens of Canadians in a terrorist attack. Not even Prime Minister Harper brought in when a terrorist murdered a Canadian soldier at the War Monument and came running into the center block spraying bullets in all directions. And not even this Prime Minister brought in when blockaders were standing in the way of First Nations who were attempting to build the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Yet, for the first time in this bill's this law's 3-decade history, the Prime Minister brings it in to address what he says was a protest in front of Parliament Hill. Ironically, this power goes beyond any of the protests and or blockades the Prime Minister claims to want to address. For example, it will allow governments and banks to seize people's bank accounts and money for donating to the wrong political cause. One journalist asked the Justice Minister if small sums donated, for example, to support an end to vaccine mandates, could get someone's bank account frozen. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said such people who make donations of that kind should be, quote, very worried. To freeze someone's bank account is not just an attack on their finances, but on their personal security. If your bank account is frozen, you can't buy food. You can't buy fuel. You can't pay your children's daycare fees. And you can, under this law, face that personal attack without being charged with a single solitary crime.
Okay, so here we are. I would like to stop and talk about the year of 2015 and what I'm seeing as I'm pulling all of this together. Now I'm seeing that Prime Minister Trudeau is elected on the 20th day on the 2015, the year 2015. I also put together that the beast that I took a picture of on CNN, this was also 2015. Okay, the beast that you see here, right? And then it looks like Braille. This was 2015. This also brought me back to BCE, okay? All of these pictures are now speaking volumes. Now, here we have the Prime Minister Trudeau, who is dressed up with the face and looks like the Hindu goddess of death. And this was taken a few years before all of this had taken place with the Freedom Convoy. This just came up during that time. You started to see these pictures being floating around, okay? But I didn't realize in 2015 that they also had this same goddess that was up in the Empire State Building in New York, which they call the Apple, and they were celebrating her right there. So here, what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing here in 2015 is that the covenant is broken here with God. We are not under God's law. The nation has broken its covenant. We have a nation now where them that are in power are worshiping the gods and goddesses, as you see right here, that is so plainly in front of us. This to me is mocking God openly, with no fear of God. Okay, so in 2020, when Jonathan Kleck came out with the Palisade video, I remembered, after seeing him showing the Palisades, I remember pulling out, I remembered the picture that I put on the shelf in 2015. And so I looked more into it, and it really did look like a palisade, that this was a palisade that was flying through the air, that you couldn't see with your naked eye. You can only catch this with the film. So in 2020, Google comes up with this picture, and I'm looking at it, and this palisade has a little like opening in the middle of it. So I'm thinking, well, this is very accurate to the picture that I took in 2015. So in the Google picture, he puts a boat inside, a sailboat, in this little gap. So I'm listening to Jonathan Kleck, and he's talking about seeing a pyramid at the end of it, at the end of the road there. And so what I do is I decide I'm going to take a ride down there and see what's on the other end, and see in that area, just to go into that area and see if anything is there at all. I mean, I'm just kind of being light about it. And when I get there, I see this white dragon, okay? And it's a big, huge white dragon, and what it does is it meets the boats as the boats come into the river. And the first thing I thought of, again, this was a picture that I took in 2015, and it was of a dragon. And here we have the dragon right here with the light coming out. Now again, I'm thinking, now I'm thinking, this is the Leviathan. This is all about the Leviathan, 2015. And this, again, is where Jonathan Kleck had seen the pyramid. So I'm looking, and I'm also questioning, because there's two entities working here. We got Google, who's done the picture, and then we got Jonathan Kleck, who's describing what the picture's all about. Okay, so he brings up the chip, right? But during this time, the Empire State Building is lit up in a distress call. Okay, there's a distress going on, a distress call going on here, and what they're doing is they're putting the connection with the Hindu goddess of death, and then they're putting the distress together in 2020. Now, for me, understanding that what we heard earlier, that this book was being passed out in the year 2020 to the princes of those that have power, and I believe right now that this is a handbook. This would be like a, this is the script that they are going to be using, and this is having everything to do with the Great Reset that they talk about here, okay, by this clause swap. But I'm going to get into that later on down the road here. But right now, this is where I'm saying this 2020 and this whole thing with Jonathan Kleck, again, is matching up with the things that are spiritual, that the supernatural was showing me in 2015, okay, about the Palisade. I want to show you something. Okay, so do you remember this? This was one of Jonathan Kleck's videos. He's holding this red book. And to me, red would be Odin, or it would be a distress signal. In behind, he's got this whole system, which is a security system. And it's the name of the goddess, the Hindu goddess of death. And here in Canada, your freedom is being taken away and replaced with government power. This would probably be the book in 2020 that was being passed around. The distress signal on the Empire State Building, putting both of them together. You had 2015 and you had 2020. For me, this is, when I look at this, and if Jonathan knows this, then he's still playing with dead things. This is who he worships. If he's playing with this, look, here you have the dragon. Here's the security. The dragon that I see, that he said that he saw a pyramid, and when I went to go look at it, here it was a white dragon. Some of the symbolism here, there's his what do you call, portal, the heartbeat here. Huh. And it says her name here, and this is wallpapers. I was just wondering. No, not here. Anyway, well, there you go. Right? Now, did he truly repent? Because if he did, then he wouldn't be playing around with dead things, and this is playing with dead things, and this is, I don't know, it's for sale, I don't know. But it also means security, and Canada's losing their security, their freedom. Just wanted to show you one more sign here. Look at this one here, the swirl. This is on his little altar there at the beginning when he started out. This is what you see along with the Bible and the sphere. Look at this. Anyway, okay. Okay, so here you have the dragon. You have behind here, you have the security company, and that company is named after the Hindu goddess of death, right? And here you have this man here holding a red book as though it would be a warning, a distress signal, but yet still a book that he's holding up. Again, we have the security behind him, and the security, the company is actually, worshiping the goddess, the Hindu goddess of death. And here, again, like the Empire State Building, it was lit up with a distress signal, and they put the two together with the Hindu goddess in 2015 and in 2020. And in 2020 is when the book was handed out, okay? Here, Clark is explaining what he's thinking of what's going on here, and you see a boat that is in this little gap right here, which he calls the palisade. And this, where he is also saying that the pyramid, he sees a pyramid, okay, and a goddess, dawn of the dawn, right? But I'm just going to say real quickly here, I'm going to bring you here. This is what I found. Hold on. Sorry, I got a little lost there. Okay, so here's the dragon. Okay, this is at the very opening. This is where he said he saw the pyramid. And here's where I found the dragon. And it's right at the opening of the river where everybody comes into the river, the boats. Okay. It is called the dragon boat. Okay, this is the dragon. This is, look at this, the dragon boat. International dragon boat for the cure for cancer. The dragon. Special services. The shoppers for cancer, for the cure. This is what the boat meant. Here's the boat. And this dawn, this goddess of dawn, we know what goddess that is. Okay, so here's the good news. This is the good news that happened in 2015. This was, I asked a question, okay? I couldn't understand why Jesus showed himself on my roof. I didn't know. I didn't feel that this picture was only meant for me to see. I was really confused. So what I did is I stepped out and I went to a few places and I showed the picture, opened up the picture to them for them to see. But this was not what was meant for me to do. It just didn't feel right. This was not my answer. This is not what I was expecting. But I went to one church and I walked in and this is in 2015, I walked in and I guess the priest noticed me and he said, "Can I help you?" Of course. And we went over to the chairs, sat down, and I just looked at him and I said, "Why? Like, why?" I said, like, Jesus is still here. Here he is. Why is this happening? Why is it allowed to happen? And I remember him looking at me and he started to cry and he took off the collar, put it down, and he said, "Now everybody's a priest." He says, "Don't look at me this way." And the thing was that affected him was that I reminded him of a young girl, and this young girl was the one who had him decide whether he was going to be a priest or not. And he became a priest because of her. And he was very disturbed at my presence. He was moved. So that was the first church. The second church, I went and I stood in front of the doors and I waited for the people to come out. And there was a little boy who was just maybe under 10 years old maybe. And I asked the mother for permission, of course, and I knelt down and I showed him the picture of Jesus on the roof. And right away he looks at it and he says, "That's impossible." Okay, so this was his reaction. And I'm praying that he remembers that for the rest of his life. And then I went to a hospital where they were performing abortions, and people were out there and they were protesting the abortion with signs. And again, I went out and I showed the picture of Jesus to show, what the purpose. There was purpose in what they were doing. And again, this just wasn't feeling right. This, I couldn't understand why was he on my roof? What was I to do? Was I to do anything at all? So again, I'm looking at this, and then I'm going through the videos here, and I see this, the prophetic dream about a location in Canada on the north side of the city. And I thought, well, if there's a location in Canada, it would be the one with Jesus on the roof, and that would be me, right? That's what I'm saying to myself. So I'm starting to listen to his dream, and I'm just like hand to mouth, and I just did whatever I could not to faint, because it was me. I was the location this man was talking about. On the north side, when he explains that he looks over to the right, and on the north side that he's looking at that building, the Renaissance building in Detroit. Okay, so that's that black building, okay, on the river, the Renaissance building. This would be north on the right-hand side, Detroit. He's confused. He says that my property's too close to the city. It doesn't make sense. He sees something. He knows that something's below him, but he doesn't understand. He doesn't see what it is that's there. And this is the river, the Detroit River. I'm about 4 blocks away from the river. Okay, so I'm going to play this out and have you hear his dream. This is 2015, February 12th was it uploaded.
This is Christian, and today is February the 12th, 2015. Today I want to talk about a dream that I had a couple of weeks ago, and this is something that I've seen repeated several different times. This particular pattern of God's revelation, the way that it works, and you may have experienced this, you'll get a dream or a word or something of that nature, and it'll only be enough information to direct you a little bit. You'll obviously not be able to extrapolate the whole plan from the piece that he's given you. And I've noticed over many years of doing this that oftentimes I'll get more information down the road. We talk about the lottery being that way, as well as this what I'm going to share today. And the dream is like 2 scenes in one dream. It's a very short dream. In the beginning of the dream, I see that I am standing on my backyard, and the grass of this area is not as well kept as I would like it to be. This is a location in Canada, so it's obviously in the future. I've never been to Canada, so this is obviously a situation that I will see in the future somehow. And that doesn't have to be literal either, so it's important to take note of that. Now, in this dream, I know that I'm on my own property, that I'm in the backyard, and I can see the property line is kind of an odd shape. It's like almost like a point, but it doesn't go to a point. It's kind of more rounded off there. And in the backyard, beyond the backyard, I can see the city lights as nighttime. And on one side, on the right side, there's one building that I'm looking at, and it's I don't want to say skyscraper because I don't know the actual definition of skyscraper, so we'll just say it's a high-rise building. And then the property on this side seems to be overlooking more of the same city. I believe it's the same city as opposed to 2. And there's more buildings over here. But there's not really anything right there that I can see at the point, okay? And I notice in the dream that it's almost as if the property is almost too close. I've never seen property that close to downtown, so I noted that to be an odd. And also that the property itself seemed to be raised, as I could see part of this high-rise building on the right side, but it seemed that there was more below it that I wasn't able to see. So the property might have been up on a hill or up on a mountain or something like that. And I don't know the city that I'm looking at. I just know that it's in Canada. That's the end of the first scene. The second scene, I'm on the back porch of this house, and it's elevated, and I'm looking down on the yard, the backyard, and I see two nocturnal-looking animals. I say nocturnal because it's nighttime and they're out foraging through the grass, right? And they're growling and making odd animal noises, and they are both moving in their own direction toward my location. And they don't know I'm there, nor do they realize that each other is there. They're not aware of the other animal in the yard. But I can tell from the direction that they're moving, they're kind of moving in this V-shaped formation, that they're going to eventually meet, and there's going to be this animals fighting thing, I would expect. And so in the dream, I spit a mouthful of water at one of the animals to both let them know that I am in the vicinity, as well as to try to scare them off, and that's the end of the dream. Obviously, spitting a mouthful of water is going to be a reference to spiritual, the Spirit of God. So you're starting to see, or I'm starting to see, some reason why you might be there. Now, I don't know what these two animals represent. I don't know a great deal about this. It's still being unveiled to me little bit by little bit. But this is something to take note of whenever you have a dream like that. Mark down the dream that you have, all the details you can recall, and anything that seems odd. The fact that the properties seem closer than you could actually be in a city. Take note of that. Just details, anything that seems odd or that you just know in the dream or whatever. Take note of those details because they're important. Those details will make a difference.
Now, the answer to my question, why Jesus was on my roof, it was a couple of days ago that I received it, and I'm very satisfied. I'm content with the answer that I received. And I'm going to put the video in the description box, but I really was surprised to find that it took 47 days for them to, when they left Egypt to the base of Mount Sinai, it was 47 days. And I was just saying to my husband, without thought or reason, I just asked, I think it's been, 47 years since my vision. And then I heard this video, and I heard this man say 47 days. And then I put it together with the 47 years that it has now taken to unravel, to unseal the vision that I saw. And it's being answered and coming in a dream. It's being answered in a dream. But I will tell you,